Yes! Today on In Soccer We Trust, we're talking the World Cup draw and our two confirmed opponents, England, Iran, and a possible opponent. We don't know who that is yet. Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine. So hit like, hit subscribe, and hit us up in the comments because it's time to get after it. What is up, everybody, and welcome to another exciting installment of In Soccer We Trust with your three favorite former U.S. men's national team players, Jimmy Conrad, that's me, Charlie Davies, Heath Pearce. The draw is out. Now we get to talk about this for 7 months, but we get to start with it today because it just happened. We drew the mighty England, the Three Lions. We drew Iran, who we lost to in the 1998 World Cup. We played them in the last game of that group stage. We get them again in the last game of the group stage. And we get either Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine. Those games have yet to be decided, but I think we can compete with all three of these teams. My buzzword, before I get to Charlie and Heath, is manageable. I think this is a manageable group. It's got remnants of the 2010 World Cup where we had England, we had Algeria, and we had Slovenia. That's how it's feeling to me. Charlie, I'm starting with you. Great to see you as always. What's your buzz? Is manageable a great word to use here?
Manageable, absolutely. I'm really liking this group. Out of all the possible combinations we could have had, this is a favorable one. If you're the United States, you're going into this optimistic. You're always going to try and compete to get out of your group. Considering how qualifying went with the ups and downs, I think there was a lot of doubt of what was realistic. It is realistic for this group of players to get out of this group.
And I love it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's realistic. I think it's completely realistic. Obviously, we were on HQ earlier, and Nigel Rio-Coker, obviously, with the experience that he has, was talking about how we don't match up even close to what England is. And I agree if you were to look at the players at the level that they're playing at right now for England. But again, you go back to England at the Euros, they played a bunch of young players.
Harry Maguire?
Yeah, I think we match up well against Harry Maguire. I think everybody matches up well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I get it. It's like Jimmy's old saying, you're never as good as you think you are, you're never as bad as you think you are. But I like the matchup of this. I think there are points available against England. I think we match up well in terms of their style of play. Granted, they're more experienced. Some of those players, they play consistently at a higher level at the moment. But when we look at aspirationally what they did in the Euros with a young squad, this is what the U.S. could do in this World Cup. Maybe not reach the final, but they do have the ability to match up against an England in that style of play very, very well. And I think we can compete with them. Obviously, we go back a couple of years, we lost to them, but it's a very different national team now with much more experience. And we're now seeing with the way this group has played out just how important Gold Cup was, how important Nations League was, how important Nations League is going to be, how important all these games are, knowing that there's just 2 official camps leading into this World Cup. All of that experience that we got is probably the biggest bulk we're going to have going into that World Cup. And now we've got a far better team. It was all relatively height-based before that, and now we feel a little bit safer. We're closer to our starting 11. So when you look at this, I'm like, man, there might be a chance to win this group, let alone finish second. But I think the goal should definitely be navigating this group, obviously knowing that the 3 games are going to play out. I believe it's playing against it's Wales.
Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine.
God, it's such a hard thing though. Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine first. Then you'll play England then you'll play Iran to wrap it up. And I think, again, even that, navigating group play, you don't have to play England in the beginning. There's points out there in your first game. And then you look at your third game. It's such a different dynamic. And the teams that do really well in World Cups are teams that have players and the quality to navigate group stages, because it's very different than anything else. It's different than a league. It's different than your cup competitions. It's just a completely different type of thing. And the more that we can tap into that and understand how we play in game 1 is going to be different than game 2. And game 2 is going to be different than game 3 in terms of our style of play, what we're looking for, sit back, press, all those things we're going to get to talk about for months. But overall, this is the most long-winded way of me saying I like the U.S.'s chance of getting
I
out
asked
of this.
for one word, everybody. Heath just talked for 2 minutes. Listen, in my excitement about the draw overall, I forgot to mention we have 2 U.S. men's national team players coming on the show today. We got Matt Turner, goalkeeper extraordinaire for the New England Revolution for the men's national team, and is going to be playing for Arsenal very, very soon. And then after him, we got Walker Zimmerman, also known as Thor, also known as the captain that led us onto the field against Costa Rica in the last game of qualifying. Obviously, we've been red hot and playing very well when he is in our starting lineup. So I'm excited to talk to both of these fellas and get their reactions around this. So Charlie, I'm coming to you. So Heath rolled out the schedule for us. Do you think it's in our best interest that we don't play England first? Because we did play them first in 2010. And because we got that draw, thank you, Robert Green, for pushing that ball into the net. it gave us a little confidence, like, hey, maybe we can go on and win this group, which we did. Now, just so everybody knows from an odds perspective, England's the heavy favorite, -200, -250 to win the group. For us to win the group is +600. I'll put some money on that. We did it in 2010. Why can't we do it again? What do you think about kind of the scheduling and how everything fell for us? Because I think it seems pretty favorable for us as well.
I would say this is best case scenario as well. England, the first match. Now, if everything goes right, you get a point, you get 3 points. But if you lose, the pressure to win the second game, it's everything. Now, the first game sets up well with you because whether it's Ukraine, Wales, or Scotland, I think everyone's going into this, it's a 50-50 chance. But the U.S., if they continue to progress and they have everyone healthy, I think this is a 3-point game for the U.S. It sets them up really well. You all know the first game in the World Cup really sets the tone. It says where this group is, what you're trying to achieve, what's realistic. If you can get 3 points in that first game, man, that gives you all the confidence you need going into England.
Well, let me speak from experience. Let me speak from experience.
By the way, we just had a white screen on there for a second there. I thought Charlie was like had some thing going on with Alex where he's going to tee up this like blank slate, blank canvas type.
It was going to be, I love the blank canvas thing. And it's also April Fool's Day. So maybe they had something planned for us. But in 2002, when we made the quarterfinals, we won the first group game. Remember, we were up 3-0 on Portugal 30 minutes in. The World Cup I happened to play in, we lost the first group game 3-0 against Czech Republic. And once you lose that first game, Portugal did it against Germany in 2014. They lost 4-0 and you're just kind of fighting up against that result. So you're right, Charlie, that first game is important. 2010, we got that 1-1 draw with England. And then 2014, we beat Ghana on that last second header by John Anthony Brooks, which again sets the tone for the rest of the tournament. And anytime we did have success in that first game, we went on to get out of the group. So yes, of the utmost importance. But it also, as you mentioned, could go down to that third game against Iran.
By the way, I wanted to point out that same with the start when Mexico beat Germany to kick off 2018. Germany couldn't bounce back from that.
That's right.
They went out, So it really does. We were all grateful that there was a huge mistake from Green, but you traditionally wouldn't want to face England in your opening game, considering the way that they played. There's Bobby G with the eyeballs there, looking for. I actually really appreciate that as a tweet. But,
I agree.
But yeah, it's just like. Again, navigating the group stages is so different, especially when you're talking about the depth of the team. Obviously, there was the opportunity if we were in a later group, you had more days together, more opportunity to train, and don't have to play on the front end. But now you get to go after it against a team that I think, again, we're going to match up well against just about anybody in this group. I think where the U.S. In terms of like tactical style of, or not just tactical, but styles of play of the teams that are in this group. I like the way the U.S. matches up. It's not too extreme. We're not talking about a completely different type of football in terms of playing to our biggest weaknesses, like we might if we were in a group with Brazil or some of the others that are going to make us chase the ball for long periods. But yeah, I like it.
Now, Charlie, we've never won 2 group stage games before. We've had 1 win and 2 draws. We've had 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss, but never 2. Do you think there's possible that we could get 2 here against Iran and Wales, Scotland, Ukraine? I mean, that in itself would be making history and obviously would be pushing us towards winning the group if we can make that happen.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, a lot of things have to go right? It's the World Cup. World Cup qualifying, yeah. Was it possible that we could win World Cup qualifying group? Yes, and we didn't. We took 3rd. So a lot of things have to go right. And this team, now it's all about progress. The Nations League is going to be, I think, a big indication of how far have we come from World Cup qualifying. This Costa Rica game, even though there wasn't much in it, that's the last kind of taste in everyone's mouth of this group. You have to have a better performance. I'm looking for Serginho Dest to have a big impact, Weston McKennie, and then figuring out who the number 9 is. It's so, I think, critical to the team's success is developing a number 9 that's going to be consistent and playing match to match. You don't have to worry about rotating. We're going to play this style or this. We're going to use these tactics. Whoever your number 9 is should be able to fit with whatever style you're going to play. If you're going to be high pressing, if you're going to drop deep, or you're going to play counterattack, that number 9 should be able to play in any type of style.
Hey, Jimmy, let me ask you this real quick.
Yeah, shoot.
While we were on this, because we just had a comment just pop up. Alex, if you want to throw that one back up again about getting
dodging
Qatar.
Some of the other guys.
Yeah, no, just in terms of a lot of people are talking about Qatar. Obviously, we saw Qatar in the summertime They play a really good style of football. And I was at the opener, not at the game, but I was in a fan park of the opener of the 2018 World Cup when Saudi Arabia, who are also very good, played against Russia. And Russia pounded them. I think it was 5 or 6-0 in that game. And I remember thinking, wow, this is great for the World Cup because the whole country comes to life and everybody sort of, the better that a host nation can do, the more of a party the World Cup becomes, right, for everybody that was there and drinking a lot like myself. But from a U.S. standpoint, the way that Qatar plays and the fact that they're home, yeah, you might not have the most like crazy fan bases in Qatar, but it's going to be. I don't know, Jimmy. Would you want to play? Would you have rather had Qatar be in Qatar's group in terms of playing the host nation at a World Cup? Is that ever something you want to do?
I would say in this particular tournament because Qatar seems to not be a very big country, and you're only getting really Doha excited about this one particular game. So I don't know. I wouldn't have mind having them be in our group. I do think that's an interesting group. I think Qatar is in some trouble. Ecuador was a team I didn't really want to face from pot 4. Senegal was the team I didn't want to face from pot 3. And then the Dutch, despite them never winning a World Cup, even though they've gotten to 3 finals, they still have obviously a ton of talent. But they're another team that I think lacks a true number 9. Who's going to step up and be for them? So there's a lot of conversations.
Wouldn't we have gotten, Charlie? I think in the draw we would have gotten Senegal, right? If there wasn't a complication in the Group A that came to Group B to get Iran, we would have had.
Yeah, that would have been intense.
You're quickly heading for the old group of death.
Yeah, that would have been trouble. So now, for everybody listening, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Turn on your notifications. Or actually, if you're watching, that's on the YouTubes. If you're listening, make sure you give us a 5-star review. Hit us up with the subscribe as well on any podcast. Really, what I want to ask everybody is, what's your one word to describe this group? If you're listening to us, hit us up on Twitter, ISWT Pod. If you're watching us right now on the YouTubes, let us know what the word is for our group right now with England, Iran, and potentially Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine. We say manageable. I heard realistic from Charlie and Heath as well as something we can get through.
I use the word favorable. I'm going to say favorable.
Okay, favorable, realistic, and manageable. They're all swimming in the same waters, you know.
Who do you think had the toughest group given Concacaf?
Concacaf? Yeah. I'm going to say once Costa Rica beats New Zealand, it's going to be Group E with Spain, Costa Rica, Germany, and Japan. But if we're talking about Mexico or Canada, I don't mind either one of those groups. I feel like all the CONCACAF teams outside of Costa Rica should be feeling okay. I mean, Mexico.
I don't know, man. You want Lewandowski and Messi in a World Cup?
Well, no, that's a tough group, but it's
Mexico at their best. I think
they could get through, and they've had 5. So we didn't talk about this before, but Mexico has 5 consecutive clean sheets in the last 5 World Cup qualifiers. Cesar Montes has been sick. He might be their answer at center back. And they're starting to get some questions that need to be answered. For me, they still need that connective tissue to get the ball to their front 3 in a more meaningful space. And obviously, they got to score their opportunities. And Mexico's obviously any team's going to have that. You got to score your chances when you're in a World Cup. But when I look at Canada, Belgium, let's Jonathan David versus Vertonghen. Yes, please. You know, like that's kind of favorable, even though I think Belgium will be tough. Morocco and Croatia are going to be tough, but Croatia's still relying on guys that got them to the 2018 World Cup final. They looked a little tired and old in the Euros last summer, and I think Canada can outlast them. And I'm just a big fan of John Herdman. I think he's a great manager, and I think he's going to get these guys out of the group. Now, when they get, let's say they get second, they cross over with Group E, which is Spain and Germany and Japan and Costa Rica. That's a tough crossover. So their journey could end then, but it could be a nice way to really set up them having a ton of success in 2026, which is what I think we're trying to do as well. Now, before we take any steps further, we have our first real special guest joining all 3 of us at the same time. Woo! Goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national team and the New England Revolution, and very, very soon, the Arsenal in the Premier League. It is Matt Turner, everybody. Let's go. Let's give it up for Matt Turner. Matty Turner, great to see you. And how are you feeling, man? We're talking about this group being somewhat manageable. Now, I know you don't want to put any bulletin board material out there, but it could have been worse, right? It could have been worse.
I'm not going to put out any bulletin board material. Yeah, listen, any group that you get put into in the World Cup, it's going to be a dogfight from start to finish. So it's nice to be able to see a pathway forward, and one game at a time. We got to see who we're going to play first in those those other playing games.
I like that. Hey,
Go ahead,
I'll ask you on that. if you were wondering going into, the locker room at Arsenal soon, if you needed to have anything in common, you now do. You're going to have a few of your upcoming foes in a very short time for you to get to know them. So I'll make sure that I send you over some details of some of the problems that they had at the Euros, maybe a few of them, whatever, just to give us a little bit of that edge. But just generally, I saw your post after the team qualified, and have you not ever thinking that you were going to be part of this journey? I mean, what is it like for you now? Obviously, you go from qualifying, we finished qualifying on a loss, which had a little bit of mixed emotions, to now the draw, right? Does it feel more real now that you actually know that there's a draw in this situation?
Totally. First of all, on the first thing you're saying, it's actually amazing that we drew England. For me, off the field, it's just an instant connection that you're going to have with guys in the locker room to help you sort of get assimilated, get connected, and create that vibe and that bond. And I'm sure it'll help Ashley and I, settle into the country a little bit, because you have that thing in common, which is really, really nice. And in terms of the watching the show, it was honestly, this is like, I try to keep it cool, but that was the first time I really geeked out, watching the draw, feeling like I was a part of it. My fate was sort of at stake and who we're going to draw. And like, that was the first time that I really felt like, wow, I'm a part of this. This is amazing. Like, this isn't a normal thing for people to achieve and accomplish. And it made me feel really, really proud to represent the United States, and really, really proud of all that I have accomplished.
Well, I'm proud of you on how far you've come. But I think it's going to be pretty unique for you to be heading to England, playing for your dream club. Now you get them in the World Cup, but playing time is really what everyone's concerned about. You look at Zach Steffen, you look at you're the two number ones. I look at it as that. It's not 1 and 2, it's your two number ones. Both
Charlie, you can't have two number ones in a starting team, man.
Hey,
I just want to
saying.
point that out. You can do whatever you want to do, but you can't have two goalkeepers. You know what I mean?
Well, you got
if we could, we'd probably win it all, to be honest.
Right? You're on top clubs, but you are presumably the number twos. How concerned are you about the playing time aspect? Is this a thing where you go over, you give it a shot for the number one? If they say, hey, you're the number two, then you say, hey, I got a World Cup to be playing in. Is it possible to get a loan in? Because, games and getting into a rhythm are very important, as you know.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, all that stuff has weighed on my decision on whether or not to accept the offer. But, when something like this comes through, it's really hard to say no. It's a dream. Like, I've been playing really well for 3 years, and this is the first concrete offer that I had. And to be able to turn my nose away at, my dream club, all that would have been very difficult. Now, on the soccer side of things, I mean, part of the reason this move was important to me was because even when I was playing every single game last year, I played like 50 games. And, when it came to that World Cup qualifier at home against Costa Rica, part of the reason, obviously, we had just come off a loss against Panama, but I was told, that, Zach is there in Manchester, and he's playing at a really high level every single day in training. He's playing the cup games. He's doing this and that. And that weighed on the decision more than my games in MLS. So to put myself into the position that I'm going to be in, which obviously I'm going to challenge for the number one role, but Aaron Ramsdale's a great goalkeeper and he's done really, really well. So I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to be around world-class players every single day, get more familiar with that pace and that tempo. And then I'm going to do what I can to play games. So while I'm over there, and if that's the cup games, if that's a reserve team game, I'm going to do whatever I can to be in that, to keep that rhythm as much as I can. And I'll be in a position where I'm one injury or one slip away from playing Premier League games. So I think it was the right move for me because of me playing every single game in MLS last year. Didn't necessarily make me the out and out number one, no matter how good my
100%.
form was.
So Matt, that was very diplomatic, and I love your answer. And he's going to be running for mayor of your city very, very soon. But I just say that because I have or had a similar career trajectory where I got told I wouldn't be good enough to be a pro. I had to walk on in college. I didn't get drafted into MLS and had to fight and scrap and found myself in a World Cup at the end of it. That's my flex of the day. And you are going through it as well. But you have to have the mindset that you are going to be the number one. And I think that's what's made you as good as you are. So I love the fact that you're being humble, but you have to believe that you're going to be the number one for the US. You're going to be the number one for Arsenal. And I think that will get you into that spot to actually make it happen. So am I correct in that, in that mindset?
Well,
that's my question.
I mean, yeah, I guess for me, it's never been about 1, 2, or 3 in terms of the pecking order. It's always been about proving to myself what I can do and proving to myself where I can improve, being self-aware about my deficiencies. If I'm not in the team, it's, taking Charlie Davies 300 shots after training every single day. It's those little things that I'm not so bought into and concerned about 1, 2, 3. It's like, okay, if I'm the 3, how can I get to 2? If I'm the 2, how can I get to 1? But it's more about me than anything else. And that's where, like, I'll call it the humbleness that I truly believe in my mentality is just more self-focused than looking at what other people are doing.
Is it weird for you, Matt, to now look at the fact that qualified, and then there's only 2 official windows now until the World Cup? I mean, looking back, how crucial has been, 1, all the matches you've played, but 2, the development of this team, a lot of young players, the youngest team to qualify for the World Cup, to now knowing that there's only going to be a couple more opportunities for you guys to get together. I guess, how do you plan to keep this group tight? How do you plan to keep in touch? Are there WhatsApp chats going on right now? I mean, obviously a lot of it's on the field, but I mean, there's also off the field that you have to come together and figure out how you're going to navigate this tournament.
Yeah, and the thing about this group is that, similar to World Cup qualifying, I imagine by the time we get to the World Cup, there's not going to be a whole lot of World Cup experience on that roster. So I think we'll take the lessons we learned from World Cup qualifying in that first window in particular, which is this stuff is no joke. And we can't just stroll out there thinking that we're the US and that we're better than whoever we're playing against. You have to go out there and fight for your country, fight for your lives every single game, because as the US, you do have a target on your back. And I think that we learned that throughout the process of qualifying. It's that you can't take any games off. And in a World Cup, all those mistakes, anything is just multiplied by 100. So it's going to be great for this group to, go down there together. And everyone's really close. A lot of those guys all sort of went through those youth national teams together. So everyone's really, really tight and close knit. And it's weird saying that I'm a wily veteran on this team. Like, I'm one of the oldest guys out there. So it's pretty cool to sort of be like a father figure to all these kids.
Looking at this past window, I know you're injured. You're seeing like you're on the precipice of qualifying for a World Cup. So it happens, but it happens in just a kind of strange manner. You get the result in Mexico, which is huge. Probably should have got 3 points. The massive win at home against Panama, but then that kind of lame loss to Costa Rica, even though you qualified. Looking at this group, how far they've come, what's the biggest deficiency? What's going to get this team to get out of the group in the World Cup? Where do they have to really kind of dig deep and get better?
I think it's just about like the mentality. I think if you look at that loss in Costa Rica, over the course of the 90 minutes, like, we really had the better chances in that game as well. But it's about putting the ball in the back of the net. It's about being ruthless. And I think all of our games that we lost in qualifying, we were shut out. So I think it's putting the ball in the back of the net, being dangerous consistently, but also keeping focus. I think obviously I'm not there. It's hard for me to be there and understand the feelings and what everyone was feeling or talking about after the game or during the game. But I think both Costa Rican goals came off of set pieces. We conceded a goal against Panama in both games against them on set pieces. So I think it's cleaning that up defensively and also just being lethal in front of goal. Like in the Azteca, we would have loved to finish off those chances. And same, Costa Rica was putting their bodies on the line, clearing balls off the line. Keylor Navas had a great game, and we couldn't find the back of the net. So I think, losing 2-0 makes it feel like a lame loss, but there was a lot to take from that game that the U.S. had never sort of been free-flowing in Costa Rica in history, and we had chances to go ahead in that game.
Hey, you know what, Matt? Jimmy, I give Matt respect for standing up for us defenders, making it about the strikers, Charlie. You know what it's like, man. That's not on us back there. That's on you guys, dude. Just do the job. You have the chances it has.
Just mark
man.
I just want to say for the record. Just say for the record, I don't like zonal defending on set pieces. I just want to throw that out there, Matt. You don't have to react to that at all. I personally do not like that. And if I can get Greg Berhalter's ear, I'll say it to him just in case.
Hey, with this group,
you let him know.
It's the strikers.
It's always the strikers. Win or lose, it's going to be the strikers. They don't score. What are we supposed to do? All right, Matt Turner, thank you so much for your time. We know that you're a busy guy. Continued success in getting back from your injury and obviously seen it out with the Revolution before you joined the mighty Arsenal. And of course, best of luck. I'm sure we'll talk to you beforehand before the World Cup starts. But you're the man, the myth, and a future legend for us. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys very much for having me on. Yeah, nice chat. And I actually have my World Cup celebration tonight actually set up for me, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's nice. Next level. All right.
Legend.
Enjoy it. All right. See you, guys. Matt. Thanks. I just want to say for the record that Charlie Davies was asking the hard-hitting questions. Charlie, those are good questions, man.
They were good questions, Charlie. And I also wanted to say, by the way, it was a very interesting that Greg Berhalter values training at a bigger club than playing regularly at the goalkeeper position. Obviously, there's nuance to that. It's not as simple as like train here and play here. But to have that conversation, one, I appreciate him sharing that because I didn't think that would be something he'd ever share.
Do you think though, Zach Steffen set the precedent? Like if that hadn't happened and we didn't already have one of our top goalkeepers in that situation, that Greg would have been up for that? Or do you think he would have been like, he's got to get minutes. He's got to stay where he's playing all the time?
I think it set the precedent because I posed this question to Greg a while ago. I said, if Christian Pulisic was bought by Real Madrid or Barcelona, for instance, and doesn't see the field, but the only reason he's not seeing the field is because let's say he has Messi in front of him or, he has Mbappe in front of him, whatever it is, and he's not playing. When he comes to the U.S., is he going to play? Of course he's going to play. You play your best players. And it's the same thing when we were playing. If Landon or Clint Dempsey, for whatever reason, weren't playing in their clubs, you knew when we came back to camp, they were starting. It was a lock, no matter what.
Yeah.
So true. I think there are certain players who have that pass. And when you're talking about Manchester City and being the backup for that type of club, you are going to be the number one, given you don't make calamitous mistakes. And you have, if you have a couple of poor performances and you have another keeper who's stellar, that's Matt Turner. I think Matt was thinking the same thing. If we're even with performances, but the only thing that's holding me back is my club name, well, let me get to the same level as him and play for Arsenal. Now that excuse goes out the window. So now it's whoever's playing better is going to play, and you can't have but he's at Manchester City. If you're playing better, then you're going to play. And I think it was the right decision. Plus, you're talking about that paycheck. Give me that paycheck.
Right. No, that's the paycheck's always a funny thing to bring into the equation, but definitely true. Now, we just had a very special guest, Matt Turner, on. We have another one coming up, Walker Zimmerman. But before he comes on, we have to take a very quick break. So don't go anywhere. Or maybe we don't have a break. What do you say, Heath?
Yeah.
The Covenant will not stop.
There is something within us. Something sacred. Something worth protecting.
Silver Team, on me.
Actually, we did have a break, and there it is. Welcome back to In Soccer We Trust, everybody.
Jimmy, at least there's something that will shut you up once in a while, man. This just came right in on top of you. It felt so good.
I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Hollywood Heath Pearce and Charlie Chuckwagon Davies, and we have another special guest for us. He wore the captain's armband in the last game in World Cup qualifying. Center back extraordinaire, two-time MLS Defender of the Year for Nashville SC. It is the Walker Zimmerman. What's up, Walker? How are you doing, my man?
What's up, man? I'm waiting to see how many more props you got hidden under that desk.
I got a ton, baby. Let's go. I got a drum and I got the megaphone. But only the best for you, Walker. So the draw comes out. We get England, which I wanted so bad because I can't wait to stuff them, Walker. And then we got Iran. We need to get revenge against them in '98 when we lost in the group stages. And then we don't know who it's going to be Scotland, Wales, or Ukraine. But how are you feeling about this draw?
I feel great about it. I think anytime that you have a draw, you're going to say, oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to play this team. I'm excited to play that team. But this really is a really good draw for us. I think when you look at the excitement it'll bring the fans, and then also in terms of just on paper, I mean, this is a favorable draw for us, no doubt about it. But at the same time, it's World Cup. Every game is so important. There's going to be a battle on the field every single game, so this will be no different. But first reaction is very excited. Obviously, the England one's the headliner for us coming the day after Thanksgiving, but really, really, really good draw for us.
Walker, looking at your trajectory in the national team going back to, less than a year ago, I mean, have you had a chance to stop and realize just how fast it has gone from you being kind of called in a rotation to you being one of the sure starters in every lineup to now getting the lineup to or the group sorted out for the World Cup? Have you had a chance to take all that in, or is it just all happening too fast?
It definitely is happening pretty quickly. Things happen fast. Obviously, we saw 6 months ago, wasn't on that roster in October. Now here we are, being on the field for a lot of the games in the second half of qualifying process. So things change, and that's a really good reminder to all of us who have been involved. Is we still have 7-8 months to the World Cup, and so it's not the time to become complacent. This is the time to improve everyone's form on an individual level, because that's what's going to help us as a collective, is not being content, not being complacent, and focus on getting better every day as an individual. That's going to help our team come November.
Walker, I feel like in the beginning, there was that transition of I'm an elite MLS defender to, oh my gosh, this is international football. And it's a little bit quicker. And, I got to build out of the back and adjust to Greg Berhalter's system. I think as of late, there was one match, I want to say it was in February, where you were starting to build out of the back, and you were playing these penetrating balls. You were playing balls that would cut out 5 or 6 defenders. It almost seemed like there was this click where you were comfortable on the ball, and you could drive at midfield. You could break through the midfield. You could make those passes. What was that for you? How did you get to that level? And then, is that where you think you've made the most improvement?
Yeah, it's funny. I think oftentimes as a player, you hear narratives, you see narratives, and for whatever reason, there's been this narrative he's not used to playing out of the back. It's like, dude, ever since I left Dallas and went to LAFC, we started, really playing a specific style of football. Obviously, Greg's introduction to the national team was the emphasis on breaking lines. So I would say over the past 3-4 years, that's something that I feel really good about. I think if you talk to the team in Nashville, you'd hear some pretty good remarks in terms of the trainings and games that happen there in terms of breaking lines and wanting to be on the ball. And it's no different with the national team. The only difference is certainly your setup is different, your opponent is different, how they press, the looks that you're getting are sometimes maybe different, and it takes some adjustments in the game to then be like, okay, so Costa Rica, for example, we realized at halftime, man, we need to become narrow as center backs, pop our midfielder out wide. They aren't going to know what to do. If they follow that midfielder, a pocket's going to open up for, say, Tim Weah to come in, boom, let's find him. And it happened at the very end of the first half. And that picture was like, okay, that's the picture that I'm going to see a lot more of in the second half. How can we do that more? And so I think the learning part of it is, how can you make those adjustments earlier? How can you see it earlier and know what to expect? But in terms of being able to do it, yeah, I have a lot of confidence in being able to do that.
And we have a lot of confidence in you, Walker. Now, talk to us about you being a kid watching World Cups on TV. And at any point, did you think I could be one of those guys one day that now here you are on the precipice of playing and representing us in a World Cup?
Yeah, I think the honest answer is actually yes. I think as a young kid, having the confidence and desire and dream and being like, I know I can do this, and having that. And a lot of people say, oh, it's a dream come true. And I never thought I'd see myself here in a million years. But the honest answer is yeah, I've always believed in myself. Now, that's not to say it's I expected it, but I always believed that it could happen. And I knew it would take a lot of hard work to get here. And again, like I said, we're 7-8 months away. So we're still not even there yet. But all things considered, I did have that belief as a young kid that, I felt like I was created to play this sport, to use this platform and go as far as I can with it. And so to be, like you said, at the precipice of possibly being involved in a World Cup, it's really special. And still doesn't make it any less shocking that you're there, even if you thought it could happen.
Walker, I got a question for you. This one's interesting just because of the fact that you guys qualified after losing to Costa Rica, and obviously the way in which the team lost, not a great moment, had mixed emotions. But the internet is sort of always mad at the national team, right? They're never happy, and obviously it was such a great feat to come back from the failures of 2018 with this group that had little to no experience at the international level to qualify now. Is there anything that gets talked about in the locker room?
Like that guy in Nebraska, Walker.
I was about to say, this might be a good time to continue my apology to the fans of Nebraska with the slip of the tongue there. No harm intended. No, you're right. It was so weird. You know, I think even as Greg came out, we were kind of talking after the game, I was like under my hand being like, dude, this is the weirdest feeling I've had in my career. Like, we just lost a game. I hate losing, but like, we qualified for a World Cup. He's like, oh, I know, man. Isn't it? It's just so crazy because as competitors, you don't ever play to lose a game. You know, that's just not in our DNA. And so definitely weird feeling. And I think
did it have to do with the fact that you finished behind Mexico and Canada?
No,
I don't. Or was it just the game itself?
I don't think it mattered
together.
At all.
I get, but you know,
I don't think at that point we were thinking of where we were in the group. I don't think any of us really even knew the final score of the Mexico game at that point on the field. And I think our reactions on the field, you could probably tell it's like we weren't really like celebrating because we lost. But then I think once guys got to the locker room, there was a big kind of, hey, look, guys. Like, this was a whole journey. This is a whole qualification process. This is not about this one game that we're going to celebrate. We're celebrating that we're going to a World Cup. And so I think guys were able to kind of quickly turn over from the result in Costa Rica to the celebration that eventually took place in the locker room.
I heard you have a decent agent. He's an all right guy.
Charlie, by the way, Gar was just all the time, Walker. And I was like, dude, get off my – I don't have anything to do with this. And then Walker comes in, and he doesn't let the position go since the moment he came back in. I was like, hey, you know, you got to give him credit when it's due.
Similar, I think you're in a similar position to how Aaron Long was before his injury. You know, 28, you're coming into, like, the prime of your career. You've been dominant in MLS for a while. You're going into a World Cup. Is interest in Europe, do you have an interest in playing in Europe? Is that something you would want to do? Right.
100%. I mean, you know, I've been very vocal to the guys in Nashville as well about it, and very transparent. That is a goal. And does that mean that I'm going to define my career as being successful or not on whether I go? No, it's not. But at this point, I am completely open to that opportunity, that challenge, should it present itself. And, you know, anything can happen after World Cup. And certainly I'd be open to challenging myself even further by playing overseas. But by no means does that mean I'm unhappy where I am. I love Nashville, love what they've done for me. But there is a deeper part of me that is always thinking, you know, what is my ceiling? How can I find that out? I think the answer probably is, I got to go.
Well, tell Gartland to get going. Jeez,
yeah, well,
you're
also going to find out in the World Cup. You're going to find out in case you go up against Harry Kane, which I am just going to throw out there. He's going to be in your back pocket by the end of this one. But I set it up. It is amazing. Talk to me, though, about the rhetoric that was happening inside the locker room about what happened in the past and not qualifying for 18, and also maybe any of the rhetoric to lead into 2026, because that's a big World Cup for us as well, as we kind of plant seeds of this experience and how that can help us make a deep run in the tournament that we're hosting.
Well, I think to bring you guys into kind of the vibe before warm-up in the locker room was, you know, Luchi Gonzalez did his typical, like, couple bullet points of getting us ready to go on the field. And then DeAndre at a moment that he had, you know, talked to Luchi about that he wanted to have a word with the guys. And I think the main message from his talk was, hey, you know, we've been given a second chance. And tonight I don't want it to be just a chance. I want it to become a fact. And that was kind of the mantra that we took going into warm-up, going into the game. And again, while we didn't get the result we wanted, we accomplished our goal of qualifying. And, you know, I think it meant so much to everyone, first of all, but more importantly to those that were involved in the last cycle to a heavy extent. So the 4 or 5 guys that were around, they were definitely felt that weight, felt that responsibility, probably even more so than the rest of us. And, you know, we're just happy that we're back in World Cup. The focus is shifting, and now it's our job to make sure that doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah. Do you think this team has, in terms of on the field, a style of play or an identity? I think at times throughout qualifying, you know, we've achieved what former generations have, which is like that fight, that grit, that sort of American mentality of when you step on the field playing home or away. But do you think that the team has gotten better through this qualifying? Does it have more of a clear picture of how it wants to play, or do you think it's still got some pieces to figure out?
You know, I think it shifts. I think that we certainly have halves, or maybe you look at the Mexico game at home against Cincinnati, where things are coming together and you're like, this is a really good team. And we know we have so much more potential than what we even showed in qualifying. And that is the part that leaves us a little bit frustrated. But, you know, you've seen glimpses of it. We have the belief that we can do it. And now it's about, we have, 6 games of preparation to really make sure that it does click. But in terms of our identity and getting the mental grit back, getting the team culture right, we've done a phenomenal job, credit to the staff, of really becoming a team through all the adversity, the ups and the downs, the injuries and everything in between. We have guys that believe in each other and guys that root for one another. And if you aren't playing that day, it's amazing to watch the guys that are sharing the same position as someone who's starting, and the encouragement and support that they give in the locker room or in the training before, the advice they give at halftime. Guys in their positions are always talking to each other about how to win the game, how to make their performance better. And that's the sign of a good team and a good team culture. And so when I look at that, that makes me proud. That makes me excited, because you have everyone in the locker room committed to that same goal. And that's what's going to carry us through for a deep run in Qatar.
So when does the studying start of your opponents in the World Cup? When are you going to be watching every match of Harry Kane? You're watching Raheem Sterling and Jack Grealish, and then even Iran, if you're looking at Sardar Azmoun and Taremi, if you're looking at some of these players, when does that kind of preparation begin for you?
It'll start pretty quickly. I'm actually surprised I don't have an email in my inbox yet from our video analysis team that's giving me the players.
BJ,
we'll get you that Paramount
BJ,
Plus login if you need one to be able to
yeah,
watch
I'm sure
all those
my
players,
Huddle account's going to get a little overload here shortly. So I'm sure that preparation is very much underway already. I'm sure everyone's crunching some film, crunching some data to get to us. And once that's in our hands, I'm sure we'll be studying it, being good professionals about it, and making sure that we're preparing ourselves for our opponents.
Walker Zimmerman, we appreciate your time. Walker Zimmerman.
Wow,
Walker Zimmerman.
2 props and 1 out. Oh my
you
goodness.
know what? Just for you. You're a special guest. We only roll out the best for our special guests. Continued success with Nashville SC. We wish you the best of luck in the 6 games with the U.S. men's national team and leading up to the World Cup. And we're excited that you represent us, man. We're even with the captain's armband and just the team overall, you're a great representative for all of us, especially as former players as well. So keep being you, Walker Zimmerman.
Thank you guys, man. You paved the way, so appreciate it.
We paid him to say that, everybody. We love it.
Did.
Walker Zimmerman, everybody.
All right.
Yeah. That was great. So we interviewed Matt Turner.
Mm-hmm.
We interviewed Walker Zimmerman. What answer really stood out for you? Charlie, I'll come to you first. From either one of these guys and some of the insight that they shared.
I think for Walker Zimmerman, it was pretty telling that they know they have a lot of potential and they haven't played to it yet. It's almost some Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. We are great at some moments in the match, and we feel it as a group. Wow, this is how free flowing, and this is how it's supposed to be. To, hey, you should be here, or poor touch here, or man, you got to finish that chance there. So I think that was pretty telling. And I think for Matt Turner, it was just he's got to be at a higher level to be considered as a number 1. And so going to Arsenal puts himself in that category now that he's on the same level as Zach Steffen. It's no longer I'm looking up and performing well at my club and I'm not going to get a chance. If he's performing at Arsenal, he's going to play.
That's going to be an interesting 7 months just to watch those two. We had it when I was going through it. There was Casey Keller and Brad Friedel, and then it was Casey Keller and Tim Howard. And it's just who's playing better.
Hey, Tony Viola's going to get mad at you.
Well, no, Big Tones. Well, Big Tones back in the day. I get it. Big Tones. You got 2 World Cups, 1994. But how about you, Heath? Anything these 2 players said that stood out to you?
Yeah, it was probably what Charlie just touched on. I think it would have been, I was expecting him to go the route of just sort of sweeping that under, not actually answering the question.
Yeah,
but
right.
To sort of see it the way that we saw it, which is that there is an identity there. They got back to the things that, again, that I think we're seeing, which is that fighting culture, that mentality. At a minimum, we got to be difficult to play against more often than not. I think that's always been the like sort of Team USA mentality, but now that like they're seeing it in flashes, and so they know that there's a lot that's sort of unharnessed right now in terms of becoming a team that's competitive in the World Cup or has the potential to go for a deep run, but understanding that potential is there right now. So that was the main thing for me that I've kind of wondered what goes on in the locker room of like, I can't be crazy if we're all agreeing on something that they don't see the same thing and willing to admit that, like, hey, we've got a long way to go. But even on bad days, let's find ways to get results. I think that's a really interesting perspective, just him being open about that.
I agree. That transparency was great. I also love the story he shared about DeAndre Yedlin wanting to address the group. I thought that was really special, and I hadn't heard that yet from anybody. So that was very cool. And you could tell the fact that he said that the responsibility that those guys felt going through it in 2018, probably much bigger than us that was going through it for the first time, I thought was really incredible insight. So I appreciate Walker being candid. Now, he did talk about getting all these videos from the coaching staff about how to start preparing for these teams. I think we're in a really unique situation because do you even send videos of Wales, Ukraine, or Scotland yet? Maybe you hold off and just do England and Iran.
You wait.
But conversely, these other teams are getting videos of us. So Charlie, what do you think they're going to identify as a way to stop us? I mean, we could argue we don't do well at times with the low block. And so I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts that how are these other scouts trying to break us down, and where do you think they can hurt us?
Well, I think it's clearly obvious that
set pieces
when we are in possession, that we tend to always look for Christian, and that Christian always checks for the ball, and that when he's on the ball, he normally takes a touch or two too many. And so that's one area where you're talking about the transition game, winning the ball off of Christian, and then
Jeez Louise, Charlie, sounds like you just don't like Christian. Yeah.
and then you look at our back line, right? At sometimes they get pulled out of position, and there's these holes and gaps, and teams haven't taken advantage of it. I think more importantly is probably on the when they're in possession or attacking or defending, that they can play high lines. We don't have a deep threat, and so unless Timothy Weah is playing as a 9, there's no pace for us at the 9 position. So therefore, teams can take a little bit more of a gamble, a risk at pushing higher, being a little bit more aggressive on the press, and trying to force them to break us down.
Yeah, no, that's some great insight. I think one of the criticisms too, Heath, is that when our plan A fails, we're not very good to adjusting to a plan B. I mean, I feel that is a common theme that we hear from the fans. Sometimes we get some nuggets of that from some of the players. We've actually had Christian come out. Didn't he say it against Canada at home? He did. In the post-game press conference, I remember Christian Pulisic going, when our plan A doesn't work, we don't know what to do. I mean, I'm paraphrasing him, but that was essentially his body language, and he was just frustrated after the game.
Jimmy, it sounds like you don't like Christian Pulisic
I love Christian Pulisic. I want as much as possible. But what do you think about that particular thing? And if Christian isn't on, who has to really step up and take on that responsibility? I'm sure it's multiple guys, but what are you thinking?
When I think about just the vulnerabilities of this team, if you're a team that's sitting back, and we're not talking about sitting back as Costa Rica, who I thought actually showed some flashes with their young players of being able to spring out on a counter. But if you're sitting back and you're condensed in the middle of the field and you're forcing wide positions, you're forcing the ball wide. One, I think we're overexposed with our attacking fullbacks that we at times send too many forward. And it just takes one time where you don't have that balance, right? We're not always playing with a double pivot between Adams and Acosta. I think that leaves us exposed where we're not quite there in possession yet, where we're confident enough, and our pressing game in transition isn't fast enough to win the ball back after you've had long spells of possession. That's part one. And then again, part two, where I think that's also plays to our weaknesses, our combination play in and around the box. I think it was just one time where it was maybe Timothy Weah and Weston McKennie back when we all got excited, where it's like a couple passes in and around the top of the area into the box that either, I don't know if we scored or had a chance from a couple camps ago. But we don't have enough combination plays in those areas where you can see the clear buildup of a rhythm, in, out, change the point of attack, or in buildup where we're probing and really taking chances at the right time. I think we're getting there, but we're not quite confident enough, and that leads to turnovers. And if you're a team where now you've got your fullbacks high and wide and you have a bad turnover, and you have Harry Kane and you have other players that can counterattack on you, I think it certainly leaves you exposed. So that type of balance, maybe that changes. Maybe that was based on scenarios that we saw that. But I saw it pretty consistently that our fullbacks are almost crossing to each other at times, where Yedlin's on the back post or Desta's on the back post getting crossed from Jedi Robinson or vice versa. And I think those types of things against better teams, they will quickly look at that and go, there's where our space is. Thank you very much. And they don't need as many chances to be able to punish you. No, that's true. As I've learned, and as you guys have learned playing at the highest level, they turn half chances at the highest level into goals, and they can absolutely punish you for mistakes. And as Walker said, or as Matt said, like, set pieces are important. You have to lock up that side of it, because ultimately those can be deciders either for or against. Now,
when I think about the group, again, we have England, we have Iran, and either Wales, Scotland, or Ukraine. When I look at England, they're expected to win. They feel that, they know it, and I think we can use that against them. So that arrogance or that entitlement or whatever else creeps in there. I don't know if the players will have that, but we know the fans at times, think that England, so it's coming home or whatever. And I think we can use that to our advantage. The Wales and Scotland, if either one of those two come in, I feel like they're in the same boat. They're in that same region of the world. So they're hanging out in and around the UK. Like they still have a little bit of, we're better than these guys, mate, and they should beat us. But Iran is tricky for me because, not to say that we think we should be better than them, but I think it'll be a little bit more comparable, and they're going to fight their asses off to get a result. And that last game, it could all come down to that last game. But
we think we're better than them.
Well, I think some fans will think that, but I think all three of us know that.
We all do.
Dude,
we all.
These guys
why
were
you lying
excellent
to
in World Cup.
Just three friends hanging out, Jimmy. Why are you lying to us?
They're excellent in
It's
World Cup
just the
qualifying.
three
They
of
only
us.
gave up
Don't
4
lie-
goals.
don't
Just
lie
the
to
three
me.
of us. Don't worry about the people, Jimmy. Don't worry about the people, okay?
Listen, we lost to Iran in the 1998 World Cup. Whatever you think
Don't
about that
compare 98.
disaster.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, though, you can't sleep on these types of teams. And I want to put that flag in the ground as soon as possible because I think we could and probably will need points in that last game to go through to the knockout rounds. And that one is what I'm a little bit concerned about. The England game will be a fight. We'll be up for it. We got to get the first 3 points in the first game. But that Iran game, it makes me a little bit nervous. Do you agree with these sentiments?
I
Heath,
agree.
go ahead.
I agree that Iran doesn't make me nervous. Iran, I think, is the most important one because, again, I can already in my mind put the team out of Wales or Scotland. If it's that one, Ukraine, I can sort of put the team out how they're going to play, and I think the U.S. can match up well with that.
Right.
Same with England. Iran, technical team, very quick, some good goal scorers, and again could play you in a number of different ways. And they were dominant, and they're the one where I'm like, the importance of knowing them in a way that I don't know them now is what makes me not nervous. But I do think the U.S. is still primed to be a top 2 in this group. And I'm happy again that Iran's not the first game either. I like Iran as the last game when you split it all up. Charlie, what's your take on Iran?
When I look at Iran, they're going to be really tough to break down, right? They're going to be organized. They're going to be, and then you have, a Serdar Azmoun who plays for Leverkusen. It's not like we don't have a number of players who play in the Bundesliga.
And he doesn't play much. And he doesn't play much right now either.
But they've seen him, right? They know what he's about. I think for us, you can never take any opponent in a World Cup lightly. That's a fact.
Right.
That's
right.
There's no given. Iran's going to be difficult to play against no matter what. The first game, whether it's Ukraine, Wales, or Scotland, that sets up nicely for us because the expectation is England's going to be the winner. So everyone's going to be battling for second place in this match.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a win here, you really put yourself in a good position. I think Iran, what makes them so difficult is their style is going to be so much different than those two opponents.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're used to a certain way of playing, whether it's Ukraine or Scotland or England, I think, or Wales, for instance. I think you're going to have to try and break them down.
It's also circumstantial, Charlie. Third game of a group could be nothing to play for Iran, could be nothing to play for the U.S. in theory, right? Going into what that means changes the way in which you're going to play, right? The U.S. might be flying against people and go, this one, we just need a point. We're going to sit back. We're going to be a little more patient and change. I mean, group stage play is so different each game as you're trying to get to the next thing that it's a little bit fluid to predict sort of that game at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting, and we'll obviously have plenty of time to continue to dissect the Americans group. Let's talk about Mexico, though. Let's get into Group C. We're going to have Mexico, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, and Poland. So for me, Mexico, just so for everybody that might be new to this or doesn't remember, Mexico has made the round of 16 in 5 consecutive World Cups. So fair play to them for always getting out of the group stages, but they always trip up at the first step of the knockout rounds. And this group is tough. You got Leo Messi, you have Robert Lewandowski, are the big 2 superstars that they'll be facing up against. This Mexico team, as we discussed, does have some issues, but as I mentioned before, 5 consecutive clean sheets. They're starting to get it sorted out defensively to end World Cup qualifying. And then attack-wise, they're doing just enough. And I think that ultimately will determine whether they do anything and get out of the group for a 6th consecutive World Cup. Charlie, I'll come to you first. What do you think about Mexico's chances? This Poland team does have their own vulnerabilities. Saudi Arabia still a little bit unknown, but very good as well. And as time
Mhm.
goes on, we'll have more and more insight onto them and how dangerous they can be. But let's talk about the familiar teams.
I would
Mexico,
say-
what do you think? What do you think?
I'd say this is more favorable for Mexico than it is for the U.S.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and
Wow,
I,
that's a bold shout.
yeah, I do.
Sounds like you don't like the U.S., Charlie.
Yeah, wow.
You look at how Mexico upset Germany in the 2018 World Cup, and I think for Mexico, everyone's expecting Argentina to run through, and with Lionel Messi running the show, I think this could be an upset game for Mexico if they're playing at their absolute best. I think Mexico stands a shot at upsetting Argentina or getting a result. I think they beat Saudi Arabia, and I think they have much more quality than Poland. Obviously, Lewandowski is kind of an outlier, but I think when you're talking about as a group, as a whole, I think Mexico stand a good chance if they can turn things around and get everybody playing and get the right kind of, I think, system, because right now, systemically, it's not looking good. It's almost like they're playing with 3 defensive midfielders or 3 holding midfielders.
Right.
They need a little bit more. I think they need someone who's a little bit more dynamic or comfortable on the ball, attacking players. And whether that is bringing in a Chucky Lozano as a 10 or figuring out, can we move somebody who's not typically a 10? Maybe it's a Lainez, whatever it is. They need someone who can break the lines on the dribble. This Mexico side is talented, no doubt. We didn't even see them play anywhere near their best throughout World Cup qualifying, but they have some time to figure it out.
So Heath, tell me this, because Poland plays Mexico first, and that game could really determine who gets second in this group. I think Argentina is going to win the group. Argentina look just so much more balanced under manager Lionel Scaloni. They've got some players that are assuming some of the void that gets left. If Messi's not scoring, who's going to step up? You got Lautaro Martinez, who's got 19 goals and 37 caps. You have both Correas, Joaquin, and Angel, who can step up and win a game for you. You got Lo Celso, who's been popping up and doing the job if needed. You have Paredes, who's sitting in front of the back 4. You got Rodrigo de Paul, Angel Di Maria. You got, you got Otamendi in back and Tagliafico, and you got some guys that do make mistakes at times, but they got Emi Martinez in goal. I like this Argentina team. I think they're going to win the group. But Mexico, Poland, that first game could determine who gets second in this group. What do you say to that?
Yeah, and they've still got a very similar team to the 2018 World Cup with Argentina, right? And they're aging through I don't want to say golden generation, because Argentina will always have top players, but obviously the Messi generation is, as long as he's in it, is a golden
Yes, of course.
generation. But when I think back, even back to that last World Cup, they were scrappy and they didn't really look like they were going to go on a deep run. They snuck out against Nigeria in a last-minute goal to win that one. Ended up losing to France in the knockout rounds. Obviously, you don't want to play against France, the eventual winners, but they didn't look great. Now, for this, with regard to this group, I think that they'll still be fine. I actually think this one's a difficult one too, because you just don't know what you're going to get from Saudi Arabia. Saudi weren't good in the last World Cup, but they've been good since. They finished above Japan, who are a very difficult team to play against as well in World Cup qualifying. And so when I look at just this overall group, I think Mexico could go through. The difference, I think, uniquely is they still have the attacking issues just like the U.S. does, but they got some more proven attacking threats, right? Chucky Lozano's has a little bit more. It was put him in the category of Christian Pulisic for us, but you've got Raul Jimenez, more proven, but he's just not in form, not scoring goals since he's come back from that almost career-ending injury. Lainez, Tecatito, you've got more proven talent, and I don't know if that's a better thing for Mexico than the U.S. U.S. has sort of unrealized talent. Mexico has sort of out of form talent. Which one of those has the better ability to be a threat in the World Cup? But I do think Mexico, just like the U.S., have a really good chance to if they start off well, to get out of this group stages. Also, it's decently favored. Again, you go back to pot A, or A, B, C, D, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're like, okay, that's a pretty favorable draw for them as well.
Yeah, when I look at Saudi Arabia's team, 99% of the players play domestically in the Saudi Arabian league. There's something to be said for that. Qatar has something very similar, maybe more of a cohesion, not as much travel.
Like eight starters from Al Sadd that all play together. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and they play under Xavi during that time. That was like a very beautiful.
You could see his influence in the Gold Cup when Qatar was in the Gold Cup. The way they play and what the passes they're looking for and how they go support the person with the ball. So I don't think Saudi Arabia is going to lay over for anybody. And as Charlie mentioned before, every game or Walker or Matt, every game in the World Cup is going to be difficult. So you have to go out there and have the right mindset. Let's talk about Canada, though.
Mm-hmm.
Canada, is in Group H. No, they're in Group F. So they got Belgium, Morocco, and Croatia. Now, as I mentioned before the break, I like this Canada team. And if everybody's healthy and Alphonso Davies is there, I think they're well balanced on both sides of the ball, because you got Davies on one side, Buchanan on the other. And then you have Kyle Larin and Jonathan David up top, or just one of them up top, depending on how you want to play. Stachio in the middle, good on set pieces, also good at distribution from deep lying places, or even if he wants to get a little higher up the fields. Back line, maybe that's where they're vulnerable, but they have a goalkeeper that wears sweats, Heath Pearce, and I feel like that's going to give them a good chance. Does Belgium, Morocco, Croatia have goalkeepers that wear sweats? I don't think they do, and I think
Morocco might.
That's true. That's possible, but Croatia's getting a little bit older. Morocco, though they have some players, I don't think that they're necessarily going to be better than Canada. I think that feels pretty even. It's the Belgium. Which version of Belgium is going to show up in this one? Heath, I'll start with you. What are you feeling about Canada's chances?
I will say that Canadian wearing sweatpants he's Croatian born. So this is a dream come true for him. But look, I mean, it's tough with Croatia, these smaller nations. It just requires so much cyclical turnover of quality players for small countries. We're just now in the US with as much as we have, still early in our developmental phases, but like starting to see a wider player pool that you require Croatia to have, again, these players continue through for decade plus in the national team. But Croatia are so good the way that they play. Morocco is another team that I wouldn't want to face in this. I think this is probably of the three teams the hardest group. Maybe you guys feel differently of the three CONCACAF teams so far, pending Costa Rica and the New Zealand game. But, Belgium, I think Belgium clearly finished on top of this group. Again, they're on the back end of their own golden generation, but still have enough, plenty of youth and talent and players in the prime of their career to win this group comfortably. And then that number 2 spot, it doesn't just look like Canada to me. I don't want to play Canada in the World Cup because they are very good, but this one feels the hardest in terms of coming out in second. Charlie, I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, I would say this is the hardest group. If you're in pot 4, you're ultimately going to have the toughest group, because pot 1, you're going to have a heavy hitter if you didn't get Qatar, and then 2 and 3, I mean, you're looking at strong teams.
Pot 4 looked harder than 3 at times, by the way. Pot 4 had some heat.
I mean, Belgium and Croatia are the favorites, and then Canada, I think they're going to surprise teams. Morocco is going to be strong. I think Canada can beat Morocco. It's not going to be easy by any means. And then you're looking to try and, whether it's get a win or a draw against Croatia and have it come to goal differential at the end of the day. I think that's probably the best case scenario for Canada. Roberto Martinez, I think for me is probably the best international coach in the game, and one that I would want coaching the U.S. had if, let's say, Greg Berhalter moved on, or we needed a coach and we could pick anyone, that would be who I'd want to coach the U.S. men's national team, just because he's had this Belgium golden generation. So he knows exactly how to manage, and he's coached successfully on the club level. He's also, been a success in international soccer. So I think that would be a perfect manager for us. So I think the way he coaches Belgium, they're just very difficult to beat and break down and get a point, at least getting a point out of that. But anything can happen. But I think this is the toughest group for any CONCACAF group. I mean, if Costa Rica wins against New Zealand, they're going to have a very tough group. But Canada they have a real challenge in front of them.
I think they do as well. And what's interesting, let me look at their schedule. So Canada would play Belgium first, and that's a tough one to have to deal with the Belgium. Maybe not. I mean, that's the game.
It could work to your advantage.
I guess you could, right? That's the game you get to prepare for the longest, because that's who you're playing. I don't know. Maybe there's some angle there. Speaking of Canada, there's a Canadian national team player on Que Golazo podcast. Jonathan Osorio sat down with Luis Miguel Echegaray and the rest of the QG crew to do an interview. So if you want to hear that, go over to Que Golazo podcast and listen to that little love for our compatriot podcast. Mm-hmm. But that schedule is interesting. And when I think about Morocco, they got Youssef En-Nesyri, who plays for Sevilla, up top. He is so hot and cold with goals. If he is scoring, I like Morocco. They got Achraf Hakimi, who plays for PSG, amongst other players. Mm-hmm. But En-Nesyri, for me, is going to be the make or break guy, because if he's in good form, they've got a chance. Croatia, they got Perisic, 33 years old, kind of the one leading and creating most of the opportunities, I'd say. I know they got Luka Modric and they've got a lot of other itches that we're aware of, but those two, Perisic in particular, if he's feeling it, he's good at getting crosses. He's good at like finishing opportunities, bringing
He's
attacks
really
to
good at
completion.
everything. He's one of my
Yeah, he
former
really is.
teammates.
He really is. And
He's one
so
of my
if they
former
can see
teammates.
him, is he really?
Yeah, in France, that's a show. And you know, I always talk about how when I came, he was a striker, and they moved him to center back because
What?
he could play.
Perisic?
He played center back and he played outside mid. He could literally play every single position. He was playing attacking midfielder, winger, striker, and
Wow.
I was so impressed with his mentality, but also just his knowledge of the game because he could play every position and whatever was asked of him, he did. And it transitioned. He really that translated well for him when he moved on to Belgium and then to Dortmund and Germany and so on. So I think that's one player who can really change the game for them.
Yeah, I feel like every team, especially in Canada's group, have a couple game changers that if they're feeling it, they really do drive their team forward. So maybe Canada does have the toughest group. I was leaning towards Mexico, but now you guys have talked me in.
Well, I mean,
to
just
Canada.
Jimmy. I mean, look, just in general, Morocco is going to have that team that when you see it, once you see the lineup roll out, and you're probably not watching the Moroccan league, and most of those players play at big clubs around Europe.
Yeah, they
very
do.
large clubs, Ziyech and a number of them, right?
Right.
But when you see it go on to paper, you can be, oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. And then you quickly, like you did right now, just go, oh man, they actually got a lot of good players and a very dangerous attack as well.
Yeah. No, it's going to be pretty interesting, but we're excited, everybody. 7 months until the World Cup starts. This is the last of what we're going to talk about here on In Soccer We Trust. But before we go, final thoughts, Charlie Davies, coming to you. How are you feeling about this draw overall? Anything about the two interviews? Give it to me.
I'm excited for it. At the end of the day, we're playing England. I love that. I think that builds hype around the group. They're a powerhouse. They have all these English Premier League players that everyone in our country knows just from following the league. And then you're talking about I think a group that we can really get out of. It's realistic. It's not a group of death and everyone's like doubting the team. We can do it. And I love the positivity and the optimism from both Matt Turner and Walker Zimmerman. So I'm excited. I think this is a great draw for all of Concacaf too. I think for the most part, I think we'll have a few teams get into the knockout rounds.
All right, Heath Pearce.
Mine would be on England as well. I think the way in which England has rebuilt their national team since 2018, going into 2018, when the FA started going out and sort of rebuilding the image of the player base and modernizing the team itself, to then getting in young players, to then changing sort of the way in which players represented the national team. There wasn't this pride in the national team that they were missing for a long time. I think that's a way in which the U.S. can emulate after the failures of 2018 with the talent crop and player that pool that we're building now and into the future. I think it's something to emulate, but we now have an opportunity to match up against them as well. While they might be favorites, I just like the confidence of this group. And I was thinking about think about them in a World Cup in a stadium full and all these things of can these guys rise to the challenge? And I was like, I'm not worried about Tyler Adams on the field against anybody. I'm not worried about Walker Zimmerman on the field against anybody. Weston McKennie, these guys, I just think about them like, I don't look at them in the way that I would look at, past generations where I look at them and I think they can look every one of those players in the eye of any team they're going to play for the most part outside of your top four and say, you know what, you don't scare me. And I can match up against you any day of the week. And I like that confidence from this team because it's not just a confidence, it's not an arrogance, it's a true belief. And we have players playing at that level week in and week out, which I love. So I can't wait.
Now that I'm thinking right before kickoff against England and against whoever we're playing in the first one in Iran, I am so fired up for these games. So we got 7 months and I'm excited to dissect these for a very long time, but this is
very
fresh.
emotional.
It's fresh
7
right now.
months, man.
It's fresh. I know it is. It's going to be emotional, but I'm excited. Everybody else is excited, and I can feel it. It's very palpable. But that is it. We are done, everybody. Make sure you join us the next time we do this on Monday. It'll be 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time, live on the YouTubes. If you want to catch us on podcast form, go hit us up. In Soccer We Trust on all the audio platforms that are available. We appreciate your support, the likes, the subscribes, the comments. It all makes a big difference as we continue to build this community to the 2022 World Cup and beyond. So on behalf of producer Dez, producer Alex, Charlie Davies, and Hollywood Heath Pearce, I'm Jimmy Conrad saying we'll see you next time.